Good.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I wonder if my good friend, the gentle lady Senator Poe, would agree to just a few questions. These are philosophical questions, really, Mr. President. And I think that I would like to have all of us ponder it, if you choose to, simply because ayoko naman sunod-sunuran lang tayo kung ano sinasabi ng malalaking bansa sa atin, katulad ng mga Paris Club. At ang tinatakot tayo palagi, yung ating mga overseas Filipino workers ay mahihirapan, tataas ng interest sa pagpapadala ng pera. Tama po ba yan?
Tama po kayo. Talagang hindi dapat sunod-sunuran tayo.
Tinanong ko po ito dati kay Cheese. I think you were there at the time. Nung pinag-usapan natin yan. At tatanungin ko ulit. Ito, like I said, philosophical ito. Nung araw, yung mga mafia, labas-pasok ang pera sa mga bangko. Yung Geneva, nung araw, yung Zurich, pinapasok lahat yung mga pera ng mga occupied countries at saka yung mga dictators na pinapasok dyan. At ang Hong Kong, ang Singapore, labasan ng mga pera natin nung araw yan. Marami tayong mga, may mga kwento araw na iba mga, huwag naman magagalit siya sa akin, alam ako tinutukoy dito, yung congressman, pag kami kasama babae sa Taiwan, magsusunog ng pera, susindan yung sigarilyo. Araw maraming ganon. That's a fact, Mr. President. I've heard that many times. These are, of course, stuff upon which legends are made. But I wonder, hindi ba dapat mahuli na yan? Halimbawa, itong mga predicate crimes na sinasabi natin, kidnapping for ransom. Meron na ba nahuling AMLA dyan na naglagay ng pera sa bangko o bumili ng property yung mga kidnappers?
Mr. President, actually, I'm not really aware kung meron ng nahabla or nahuli dahil sa mga deposito sa bangko. Except, for sure, there's that money trail. We know about the story about in recent memory, the Bangladesh heist.
Yes.
We follow the money trail there. And then,
pero wala pa rin nahuli, di ba?
Hindi pa yata nahuhuli, pero meron din pera na ibalik, pero hindi yata kompleto pa rin.
That is my
Or
point
hindi pa
now.
yata nababalik. Teka, 1 minute suspension. Let me just check on the
Check.
facts,
Yes.
Mr. President. Just 1 second.
Session suspended.
Conviction predicated on kidnapping dito sa kaso sa Bangladesh heist. But for the exact complete details, we can probably read through it if I can, if the gentleman from Zambales would still want more detailed facts on that.
I would love to hear the details, Mr. President, because I just want to be sure we're not writing a dead letter law just to appease our well-heeled friends, Mr. President. Lugi na nga tayo sa vaccine eh. Nauna na sila. Tapos yung ginawa nila nung araw, legal na sa atin, hindi legal. To my mind, would you agree, Mr. President, na John Lady agree na pag may pumapasok na pera dito, gustong-gusto natin yan dahil iikot ang pera, di ba? Kaya nga tayo nangunguha ng investments para pumasok yung pera rito. At kung papayagan natin pumasok, walang tanungan yung mga pera na papasok. But let me just premise this fact. This is philosophical questioning. I'm in favor of a money laundering law. Hinahabol ko lang yung effectiveness. And going back to my question, kung aire libre, nakakapasok ang pera dito, pag may pera, marami magkakaroon ng kabuhayan. At pag may pera pumapasok, malalaman natin yung mga nagpapasok. Halimbawa, tinanong ko po ito, inimbestiga ko po yan, di ba, about last year, merong grupo na nagpapasok na umabot ata ng almost $200 million. Rodriguez, ma'am, naipasok. And yet, nung tinanong ko ang AMLA, hindi naman ako nagagalit sa AMLA, ang sabi nila, nakumpiska lang nila sa bangko ay 1 million pesos. Dahil raw may kakulangan sa batas. Ayun na nga ang sinasabi ko, ma'am. Magpapasok ng milyon $, Ganun rin sa Amerika, makakapagpasok ka, so long as you declare, hindi ka sisitahin. Pero, why sila? Kasi ganun rin tayo, may law tayo. Yung nga lang, hindi natin na-implement yung dapat implement. Follow the money trail. Dahil at least, kung may nagpapasok, meron kaagad tayong suspect. Would you agree with that, ma'am?
Yes, actually, Mr. President, if while we're looking for the actual report on the one that's about to be convicted for that money heist, let me just give you some of the provisions that we crafted to give AMLAC hopefully more teeth and less of an excuse to use to say that they're ineffective. Number one, now they can actually freeze accounts if it has something to do with proliferation financing. Anything that can finance weapons of mass destruction or in violation of the United Nations Security Council regulations. So they can immediately freeze that. Now, if they find also other violations, for example, fraudulent tax activities more than 50 million pesos, they will have to go to the Court of Appeals and ask the Court of Appeals to freeze the money, and the Court of Appeals will have the right to freeze it within 24 hours. And that can remain frozen for up to 6 months if, but if there are no cases followed through or filed with regards to that complaint, then the freezing of the assets will be lifted after 6 months. But if there's a case, of course, while it's ongoing, it's frozen. Next, um, now, the AMLAC kasi is usually manned by, I don't know if they only have 200 employees, but definitely they're terribly undermanned. Okay, so this law that we have now will allow them to deputize government representatives from the from the NBI, for example, from the BIR, to help them with information gathering or whatever assistance they might need because they're so overstretched. So those are just the two things. Plus, with the order given by the AMLAC for freezing of accounts, the the ones that will be subject to the investigation of the AMLAC cannot seek injunctive relief unless, of course, through the Supreme Court. So these are just a few of the extended authority given to the representatives of AMLAC para they have less of an excuse to say, ay, hindi na nahabol yung pera, 1 million na lang ang natira eh. They can immediately freeze something, especially when it has to do with the proliferation financing of mass terrorism. They can immediately freeze. And for others, they can do it within 24 hours. They can do it with, the Court of Appeals can do it within 24 hours.
Again, I agree. For example, yung ma'am, nagpasok na maraming dolyar, dineclare niya, tapos hindi na sinundan yung pera. Saya wala talagang mahuhuli. Meron silang money exchange na pinupuntahan, dinadala yung pera doon. Pero wala nangyari. Kaya nga baka buksan ko uli yan dahil ma'am, ang frustration ko sa Blue Ribbon at saka sa mga iniimbestiga ko konti lang ang may naman na napapakulong tayo pero yung mga dapat ipakulong parang hindi iniintindi. Now, again, I go back to the philosophical. Sa akin, it's always good that people have a lot of money coming into the country. Would you agree, ma'am?
That's the allegation, and it seems that the very controversial ones happened here. In fact, there were also some whisperings that the Wirecard, was it the CEO, died here, and then there was a death certificate, no body kasi na-cremate na yata kagad. So all of these things is criminal. It's not just financial. There is, going back to your initial inquiry, Mr. President, the details of the Bangladesh bank heist, Maya Dagito, I guess the bank representative, has been convicted. But there are ongoing cases with the bank officers and the owners of the money service business. There
Sa
are,
RCBC. Sa RCBC yan, di ba?
I think, RCBC, and then also the
Natanggal yung
money
mga implikado doon.
money exchange company involved.
Yes, yes.
I forget the name of that company, but ano nga yun? Anyway, and then there are money laundering convictions predicated on kidnapping for ransom. There are
Sino
wherein
yan, ma'am? Sino yan? Wes, wala pa yan.
It's predicated on baklado and aquatin.
Tingnan
1
niyo.
minute suspension, Mr. President. I'm trying to decipher this right.
Session suspended.
Money laundering convictions predicated on kidnapping for ransom. These two were involved, Baklado, last name Baklado, and Aquatin. The ransom passed through the banks. There are also ongoing money laundering investigations predicated on kidnap for ransom. So yun naman yung case ng kidnapping doon. Now, there are also illicit funds that pass through those banks. Now, with regards to the detail of that, that's all. We can probably, we can send the good gentleman, or we can wait until towards the end of this interpellation. If we have more details, we can go on.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to wait because I really think that it's puny ang nangyayari, no? And I'd like to make sure, I'd like to support them. I even told the AMLA when they saw me in my office na I will support them. Kaya lang, kung wala naman sila nahuhuli, para lang tayo sunod-sunuran, no? For example, ma'am, andito sa yung mga suspicious transactions, Masyao, Weteng, alam naman natin lahat dito kung sino ang Weteng sa mga probinsya. May kanya-kanyang bosyo doon sa mga probinsya, pero wala ko narinig na inuhuli ng money laundering council yan. Yung mga qualified theft, dapat mahuli yan. Yung mga swindling, smuggling, nung araw, nung bata ako, si Bukalan, sikat na sikat sa Cavite yan. Pero wala akong narinig na nahuling smuggler. Marami pang iba sa mga sigarilyo, pero nag-settle na lang, no? So to my mind, parang marupok at manipis yung batas, no? In the sense that bakit ganon? Between you and I, kung tatanungin tayo lang nag-uusap, I'd rather pumasok ang pera dito, sino ang may-ari niyan, bantayan natin yung may-ari niyan, at kung nakikita natin may kalokohan, talagang gamitin natin by good sleuthing. Pero kung gagawin mo lang yan ang batas, they will always violate the law and we will never be able to get them. Case in point is the massive smuggling of dollars that came in. Ang sabi, dineclare naman eh. O kung dineclare, syempre, obligado ang AMLAC dyan, nasundan nila yan. Alam mo, sabi sa akin, ma'am, sabi sa akin ng AMLAC, matatawa ka. Nabulilyaso raw dahil in-expose raw natin yung pagpapasok ng pera. Tayo pa nasisi. Hindi ako makapaniwala yung mga ganun rason. So really, if the mafia did it before, if the Jews money are still in Switzerland, hindi pa makuha with all due respect to my friend, the ambassador of Switzerland. Hanggang ngayon maraming complaint dyan. Hindi na nabuksan yung nandun pa yung mga pera nila dahil nangamatay na yung mga Hutyo na pinatay sa Holocaust. Ano po? So, really, sa atin ngayon pinapatong. Kaya sabi ko, nagpapakahirap ako sa investments, pumasok ang pera dito ng araw. Pero Pati nga yung mga naglalabas ng pera na, let's say, illegal wealth, no? Ang dami-dami mga suspicion natin. Pinapangalandakan natin yan. Pero siguro, pabalikin natin yan. Bigyan mo ng amnesty. Baka hindi na tayo magbabayad doon sa PCGG ng malaki. Pero yun ang mga sinasabi ko, mga example, or for that matter, in my own city of Olongapo during the Vietnam War, millions of dollars were coming to the city and nobody ever bothered to think that we would get that. So much so that after Ninoy Aquino was killed, hindi tayo makabili sapagkat sinaran lahat ang gripo ng bangko sa atin. At ginawa yung Binondo Central Bank na may gray market, kinukuha yung mga pera doon sa mga gray market na nagpapalit ng dollar sa Manila, sa Clark, sa Subic, at binabantayan namin yan para may pambili tayo dahil hindi na tayo makabili dahil wala tayong dollars. Sa akin, kung gano'n rin naman naabot-abutin, I mean, papasukin nyo. Alamin lang natin, nagpasok ka ng malaki, mayroon na akong lead. Nagpapasok ito si ex-person ng $100 million. O may lead tayo, tingnan natin kung saan pupunta yan. Kaysa naman, sabihin natin, hindi ka pwede magdeposito dyan sa mga bangko na yan dahil know your customer. Siyempre, yung bangko, gusto niyan palagi may magdideposito sa kanila. At I think that what is important is pag may nagpasok ng bangko, I don't know if I'm being naive, kung may nagpasok ng pera at nahuli natin, dapat yan, saan galing yan? Parang drugs eh. Hindi mo mapigil, then pinapatay lang eh. Hindi naman talaga hinahabol kung sino ang source ng drugs. Eto, sino ba ang source nitong pera? Saan ba galing itong pera mo? At kung yun, galing sa ibang bansa, di yung mayayamang pera, yung mayayamang bansa na mayroong mga law na ganyan, use it as evidence against these people when they are in their country. Bakit tayo? Kinakaya tayo, nilalagyan pa nga tayo para hindi na tayo kikibo eh. Lalagyan yung customs, lalagyan yung pati bangko na lalagyan, di ba? Yung nangyari dyan sa Bangladesh. Lalagyan lahat yan. So, sa akin, papasukin mo yan at i-report mo kung saan galing yan. Kung i-report natin sa Bangladesh yung ganyang kalaking pera, nakalusot pa nga sa Amerika yan eh. Galing-galing ng Amerika, dumaan pa sa New York. Tapos ngayon sasabihin tayo pang money laundering major city in country involved in money laundering. Excuse me. Ang dami-dami pumapasok sa American pera, ang dami-dami pumapasok sa Europe na pera, sa Geneva, pero wala na huli. Pero makakatulong pa nga tayo kung may mga papasok na ganyan. Halimbawa, yung Pogo, ang dami-dami pumapasok at ang lalaki ng pera ang inaabot, nakakapag-invest sila sa real estate. I think, ang daming pera, tumaas ang real estate value. Yung anak ko, yung bahay niya, hindi niya pinaparent dahil ayaw niya parent doon sa mga nagpopogo out of moral conviction. Pero ibig sabihin, nalalaman mo ngayon, saan ba galing ang pera nito? You remember that investigation I had that they were in Las Piñas ba yun or Parañaque na nagsandamakmak yung mga Chinese or nagre-rent? Meron pa silang shooting gallery, meron silang shooting range, pero sa Parañaque, pero wala nangyari. And to my mind, what is happening to our country is really awful. I will just digress a bit. Payagan nyo lang ako. Halimbawa, yung NBI, pinatay sa opisina niya. Yung mayor ng Los Baños, pinatay sa opisina niya. Sabihin kagad, padala niyan, task force to investigate. Wala na naman mangyayari. Lalo na dito sa money laundering. Kunyari, susunod tayo. Kayo siguro, pag nagdeposito kayo, you are what they call a politically exposed person. Like me, like Frank Drilon, like everybody here. Ang dami pang tinatanong, almost embarrassing. At yung mga sumusunod, yun na paparusahan. Pero yung mga mayayaman na talagang mga hangal at baliktad na yung bituka sa kalawalang yan, yun ang nakakalusot. Would you agree with me that that's a factual situation, ma'am?
Actually, Mr. President, that's one of the reasons why I am glad that the minority leader brought up the question about banking and offshore gaming operators. That's precisely the point of Senator Dick also. All this money is coming in. We're being so careful about know your customers, expanding the implementation beyond what it really is. In fact, knowing it's not anymore knowing your customers, it's discriminate, basically. If they are not putting their money in the bank, isn't it more dubious that they are able to acquire large parcels of real estate land? They're able to acquire so many other things, not going through the formal financial sector. So, as Senator Gordon is saying, the informal economy is booming in itself, and the informal economy can really be subject to laundering. So as much as possible, we are trying our best to absorb some of them under certain safeguards and guidelines within our banking system. So, Mr. President, yung sinasabi ni Senator Gordon yan, ang dami-dami naman pumapasok na pera dito, pero itong mga regulations natin can't really help. It's true, we can't really cope. In fact, what we're doing here is just little steps that we think we can be able to catch up, but there's still a lot of catching up to do. But at the moment, at the bare minimum of the community of the banking industry all over the world, this is what they prescribe. And yung sinabi ni Senator Gordon na huwag tayong sunod-sunuran, I agree. That's why when we had our committee report, Senator Villar, Senator Recto, our committee hearing, Senator Drilon, all of us said, oh, ito yung gusto ng AMLAC, ito rin yung gusto ng central bank. Pero teka muna, wag naman natin pahirapan yung ating mga kababayan na lahat, all cash transactions for real estate negotiations have to be reported. Kaya ba ng AMLAC kunin lahat yung mga impormasyon na yan? So they made it 5 million, above 5 million pesos. So that's one compromise. Number two, when it comes to tax evaders, kasi that's also part of the proposed condition. Sinabi ng Senator Drilon, teka muna, lahat ng tax evaders, lagay naman natin may malicious intent or fraudulent tax filers na above 50 million pesos. Kasi kung lahat ng tax ano ba to? Kunyari tax liability or what do you call this, issues, i-report natin sa AMLAC. Hindi na naman, parang naghahanap ka ng needle in a haystack. Kaya mabuti pa yung talagang merong cause to believe that it's malicious intent for fraud. Kaya yun yung mga conditions.
Yes, ma'am. What I'm just saying simply is that nung araw, lahat ng money changers dapat nagre-report sa central bank yan. Pareho ng bangko. And yet, nakikita mo, may iba dyan, malalaking money changers talaga. Yun yung tumatanggap ng perang nilabas sa airport eh. Ang laki-laki. Pero wala. 1 million lang nakuha nila doon. Inolonggo po nung araw, I can tell you, maraming yumaman sa money changers. Konti lang. Why would I begrudge them? Dumarating yung Amerikano with 6 paychecks, mag-good time yan, ipapalit yung dollar sa pesos, tutubo sila, napaalala yung mga anak nila, may mga doktor na, may mga lahat. Tapos ngayon, pagkagagawin mo yan ngayon, babantayan mo sila lahat. Sa akin, there is such a thing as lahat naman ng mga kayamanan ng malalaking tao dyan, even, pardon me, no, even the Kennedys were involved in smuggling of liquor, Hague and Hague, during the Prohibition. Or for that matter, the family, with all due respect, nabasa ko lang sa libro yan, si Franklin Delano Roosevelt, yung kanyang lolo, involved in the drug trade in the Opium War, Mr. President. So, sa atin, dahil tayo ay ginagawa tayong musmos sa sunod-sunuran, talagang kinakawawa tayo ng gusto. And I'm thinking of a better mousetrap, Mr. President. Because sa tingin ko, yun nga, wala naman nahuli, maraming money changer dyan, hindi naman nagre-report. Yung mga bangko, meron tayong know your customer, nakakalusot naman. Katulad nga yung nangyari doon sa Bangladesh. I'm sure there are many others. But sa akin, I'm a free trader. I'm always involved in pasukin yung pera, mag-trade tayo, malalaman yan. Dahil papasok ang pera naninakaw sa ibang bansa, if you will, corruption doon. Pag pinasok dito, di may lead pa sila. May utang na loob pa sila sa atin. O, yung pera nung hinahanap nyo, nandito. O, pwede namin kayong tulungan. Dalhin nyo yung inyong intelligence group dito and we will work with our policemen. Mahuhuli natin yan. Pero pag nakalinyada lahat yung sinasabi natin, kahanap at hahanap ng paraan. Hindi na susunod eh. Hindi na susunod talaga yung mga batas natin. Ewan ko kung meron tayong spine na para sabihin sa kanila, kayo ginawa nyo yan sa Europe eh. Ginawa niya sa Amerika. Ginawa niya sa Hong Kong. Ginawa niya sa Singapore. Ba't naman kami ngayon? Papahirapan nyo kasi lahat kami, pati ba naman yung overseas Filipino worker, money launderer na? Doon nakakasuka eh. Doon nakakainis.
Hindi, Mr. President, if I may, hindi naman nila sinabi na yung ating mga OFW money.
Papahirapan lang nila.
Hindi, yun yung consequence. Parang doon tayo nakaka-hostage. Dahil any financial transaction will be at a higher cost for us. That includes,
That's right.
of course, our overseas workers because they are transacting financially. Now, I am very open to other more effective ways to catch our launderers. But in fact, yung mga money exchange places, pawn shops, remittance centers, they're all included. But the gentleman from Zambales is correct. Ang hirap nilang mahuli. And I think also because AMLAC people, iilan-ilan lang sila. Kulang talaga. That's why in this bill, they're allowed to deputize kahit yung NBI para tulungan na sila dahil instead of hiring more people, they can deputize other government agency employees to help them. Now, this is the bare minimum. We can certainly improve this law to make it more effective and even more so the implementation of it. But at the bare minimum, this is all we need right now so that we can breathe a little. I know we feel like bakit tayo pinipressure ng ganito? I guess in any agreement that you enter, there are benefits. There are also some consequences if you don't participate. We just have to, at this point, make sure that it's not an unjust provision that they're asking us to do. It is not taking away the basic rights enshrined to our citizens. It protects also our citizens from scammers or launderers. So I don't think there's any harm accepting these provisions.
Again, ma'am, these are all philosophical questions. I am for the law, but I'm just citing na, as you say, nahihirapan tayo dahil mahina pa yung bansa natin. Unequal treaties are always the result of unequal bargaining strength. Di ba? Unequal vaccination is equal to the fact that we have unequal capability to buy the vaccine, especially Pfizer. Kaya nakukuha natin yung pinakamura. And so I'm going to watch muna bago tayo magpa-vaccinate. Let the others be vaccinated, pero pag-ingatan lang natin. But again, going back to money laundering, are you aware, ma'am, and in my spare time sometimes, when I have time, I look at the internet, and you're aware, of course, that Canada has a severe problem in terms of money launderers, ma'am. Kung ano na ang batas na ginawa nila, I think in Toronto, I think in Vancouver, napaka-rampart yan. In fact, yung mga bahay na nabibili doon. And yet, I don't know if they have been successful in really shutting down the forces of the money launderers. As you say, there's a saying by, I think it was Abraham Lincoln, the purveyors of pernicious poison, and that refers to black propaganda. I can use it for money laundering. The purveyors of pernicious poison, from drugs to money laundering, are more industrious than our law enforcement authorities in getting what they want to have. So, ang Canada, ang anti-money laundering and terrorist financing laws are primarily contained in two statutes, the Criminal Code and the Proceeds of Crime. Ibig sabihin yan, tama yung title na yan. Yung money laundering, mali eh. Kasi ma'am, pag pumasok yung nung araw, di ba, pinapasok ng mga tao natin pabalik, gusto nila cash eh. They don't trust the banking system. They don't want to pay taxes. Binubusan nila o nilalagay kung saan yung pera, And even our own countrymen nahuli, mga generals natin nahuli, may lalaki ng mga dollars na nahuli. Tayo nahuhuli pero yung malalaki hindi nahuhuli. And yet, tama yung sinasabi, proceeds of crime. Kung may kunyan proceeds of crime in the Philippines, by all means, hulihin natin. Kung proceeds of crime in another country, that's their problem. They don't help us when we have criminals here. In fact, pagka nakukulong yung ibang mga sundalo nila, binibigyan natin sila ng we lean over backwards. But why should we lean over backwards if they themselves cannot implement it in their own country? Ayan ba, yung campaign finance law, ang daming violations dyan. Pumapasok yung pera dyan na pera na nabibigay, kaya kumisan yung tawag nating regulatory capture, nangyayari. At kung titignan mo talaga, lahat tayo siguro matatamaan pag sinabi mo na we're spending too much for TV ads, we're spending too much for this and that, and to the point na talagang kung wala kang maraming kaibigan, patay ka. Kung di ka marunong mag-raise ng pwera, patay ka. So, ang sinasabi ko lang, ma'am, is masobra naman ang leaning backwards natin. Especially, kung walang maipakita sa akin ang money laundering commission, sinabi na, kulang raw sila, kulang raw ng budget. Pero kung may papakita yan, pareho ng intelligence fund ng military, intelligence fund ng police. Ang lalaki ng intelligence fund, pero may napapakita ba sa atin na nahuhuli? Nakakaawa yung mga pamilya ng mga napapatay pero puro investigasyon na investigasyon. I was shocked last night. The NBI Director for Anti-Terrorism was the one shot in his own office and they cannot even find out who shot him until now unless there is some news that is broken through now. And that's precisely what I mean. We are very fond of dead letter laws, Mr. President, and I'm not criticizing you. But the executive or the government keeps on sending us bills na kung talagang tutusin, lulusutan at lulusutan tayo. Ayaw nila, halimbawa, and again, I'll sound like a broken record, and I don't mind, nung sa Subic, sabi ko, huwag na kayong pumunta sa Hong Kong. Dito na lang kayo pumunta. We will give you $200 allowance to bring your family here, eat good steak, buy something, and you can take it out provided you don't go beyond $200 para you don't teach our people to violate the law. Parang 10 commandments eh. Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. But how many adulterers are there? How many liars are there? How many people do not respect their parents? Ganyan na nangyayari sa atin eh. Sa akin eh, I think that it's about time that we look at the philosophy of our laws instead of just following these first world countries that are not paragons of virtue from everywhere. I don't want my friends, the embassies, to get mad at me, but they know. America keeps talking about civil rights. Hanggang ngayon, the blacks are still being discriminated. The Asians are still being discriminated in other places. Mabuti ka kanina, ang front page sa Pilipina, nag-i-injection doon sa 90-year-old woman. Doon lang tayo nanalo yung mga heroes natin, yung mga OFWs, panalo. Pero pagka hindi tayo sumanod, dadagdagan ang kanilang interest para mapagpadala sila ng pera. That's what revolts me. I hope you understand where I'm coming from, and I know you do. You're a smart lady. We're just trying to look for a better mousetrap, ma'am.
Yes, of course, Mr. President. As I've mentioned, I think that even if they are compelling us to pass it, I still think it's the step in the right direction to include other, like for example, upon the suggestion or the amendments of our brilliant minority leader and also Senator Marcos, we included the offshore gaming service providers. There's a substantial number of them. Well, not a substantial number, but there are a number of service providers here. Also, it would be good to include them in the formal economy so we can keep track of them, and they can also pay their proper dues, which they claim they're doing. But of course, it's very difficult to monitor if they're all doing it in cash transactions and they're not yet mentioned in this AMLC law.
But precisely, ma'am, the word that I really despise is mahirap yan. It's very difficult, and I beg your pardon. Sinasabi ngayon sa mga staff ko, find a way. We're lawyers, find a way. And of course, I'd like to do this in this particular instance, but really, I really need to have those who are asking us for money to have an effective law to find a way because they're the ones that are going to implement it. Now, makita nyo, there is an anti-dummy law. Bawal magkaroon ng property yung mga foreigners. And yet, how many people are violating that law? We rarely hear of an instance where these people have been put before the bar of justice.
Wala pa rin? Ay, sorry.
Yun ma'am, yun ang akin. So maybe we should think about that. Sa akin, I don't like amnesties, but yung mga sinasabi na may mga problema, naglalabas ng pera, di pabalikin natin yung pera para mabalik yung pera, may makuha tayo kahit na paano kaysa nag-aabang tayo sa wala. At tapos sa PCGG, makukulong pa yung chairman nila sa Muntinlupa. Can you imagine that? Nakakagimbal. So, ang sinasabi ko, ma'am, I congratulate you for your industriousness, but I am sorry I cannot congratulate the AMLA because, or for that matter, some of our friends who cannot seem to come up with something rather than, albeit just simply follow the dictates of the big countries. Now, I know many of my friends who are ambassadors, why are you doing that? And I always tell them, because you've done it before yourselves. And yet, what you did before, you're now imposing on us. That's why even in the environmental law, lahat yan noong araw, untrammeled yung destruction ng environmental law, pero ngayon bawal na sa mga developing countries. So that is the kind of analogy that I always say and I always get upset about. That is all I would like to ask, Madam Senator, and I thank you for your time. I just wanted to put my inputs there para maybe we can find some sources in all the laws that we do because really again I repeat, the purveyors of pernicious poison as crimes terrorism, or for that matter hindi na crimes against terrorism, smuggling, gambling, they're more industrious. Mas magaling sila magbigay kaya hindi tayo na makakahuli talaga. Yan lang po ang aking gusto sabihin. Patawarin po ninyo kung ako'y may natapakan. Thank you very much po.
Thank you.